Are you ready to jam?
Oh, yeah.
At Genzabar Jam, Genzabar's annual meeting for users in Orlando, Florida, 2023 at the Gaylord Palms Resort. We're going to learn, share, and connect. You can register today at jam.genzabar.com. Ready to revolutionize your higher ed marketing game?
Yes.
Well, then don't miss out on Element 451's Engage Summit, June 27 and 28. Explore the cutting-edge world of education and AI technology and unleash your creativity like never before. Register today at engage.element451.com and use promo code EdUp50 for $50 off. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to head up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again here on another episode of EdUp. And, you know, guys, we like to bring you the most timely, hint, hint, topics that we can here on EdUp. And we know that mental health continues to be one of the, if not the, most important issue of our time as we deal with students. I can tell you this from my personal experiences at Lindenwood University, where I'm a senior vice president. There's just a lot. There's a lot for students. And I'll hear sometimes, you know, so-and-so student isn't coming back to the school because of mental health reasons. Or we need to put more into our mental health facilities or student support services because students are really feeling the burn right now of stress, of finals, so there's just a lot. There's a lot around mental health and so much conversation that still needs to be had, right? Because I feel like we're just scratching the surface on these issues, and we don't know, I don't think, how deep they go. But we are going to bring in two individuals that will tell us, at least give us some indication on where these issues stem from. Somebody I'm going to bring along for the ride. You know him. He's my guest co-host. You've heard him before. He's been here, I don't know how many times before. Today he's doing some pretty cool stuff with AI, and I'm going to let him tell you about it. He's Dr. EJS, Eric James Stevens, and he's an ed tech entrepreneur. Eric, welcome back.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Joe. I'm really looking forward to being here. Thanks.
Well, take 30 seconds and tell us what you're doing with AI.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure, why not? Thank you.
If you really want to, if you don't want to,
no,
it's
I
fine.
love it. I love the opportunity. I am actively collecting data in order to build an artificially intelligent teaching assistant, an AI-powered teaching assistant. And I believe in order for us to do that in a way that education wants to use it, we need to build it ethically and transparently from the ground up. So I'm collecting 5,000 essays. I'm giving away $5,000 to get them. I've given away about $3,000 so far. I have 2,000 left to go. Thank you to builders and backers for that money. And I'm really excited for the next phase, which is going to be training the data so we can train a model.
That's amazing. So it's gosh, I read something yesterday that said 100 AI companies have been started in the last 7 days or something like that. And you think about
At least
the possibilities are continually endless. And then I read something that said, it was the World Economic Forum that says there's going to be about 85 million jobs lost and about 69 million created over the next 5 years. So a net loss of 14 or 15 million jobs across the world. People's skills will be important, and that AI is putting a lot of stress on people as they worry about how it affects them. So it's good timing to have these folks on. I'm going to bring them in one at a time. Here we go. I'm going to go with the easy name first and the harder name that I got to think about for a second. We got Becky Laman. She's Senior Vice President of Strategy for TimelyCare. Becky, how are you?
I'm great. Excited to be here with y'all today. Thanks for having us.
And thanks for giving me the moment to bring in my second guest here. She's Seli Fakorzi. I hope I got it right. Director of Mental Health Operations at TimelyCare. Seli, how are you?
Doing great and ready to have this conversation with you all. Thank you for having us.
Oh, thanks for coming. TimelyCare. You've just gone through a rebranding. We're Timely MD, now TimelyCare. So Becky, I'll start off with you as the Senior Vice President of Strategy. That sounds like a very strategic move to rebrand. But as you tell us about that, tell us what TimelyCare is. What is it that you do and how do you do it?
Sure, absolutely. So You hit on it a little bit in your intro. So mental health is the number one reason students drop out of college. And really our mission is to improve the health and well-being of college students by making virtual medical and mental health care accessible anytime and anywhere. So TimelyCare is the leading health and well-being solution in higher education. We are dedicated to students of higher education. And currently we serve approximately 2 million students at more than 250 campuses nationwide.
2 million students?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
That's
So
awesome.
what's
That's
what's
so
this
cool.
infrastructure look like, Becky, to do this? I mean,
Absolutely. And so we have a virtual clinic as well as self-care resources, in addition to a peer community where students can interact with each other in a safe environment, which is so important. So as you kind of talk about social belonging and the impact that the pandemic had on students, it's really important that we provide that holistic solution that's all inclusive to support them when and how they need it. So our services include mental health counseling, on-demand emotional support, which is what Seli oversees, medical care, psychiatric care, health coaching. We also have a basic needs assistance service that if students have any kind of basic needs insecurity, food insecurity, financial insecurity, housing insecurity, we have a team to help them with that. We also partner very closely with faculty and staff. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier that peer support that they can provide each other, as well as digital self-guided resources, which is a lot. It's a lot of services, but when you talk about providing equitable access to care and inclusive care, that's really what it takes to provide that high quality care experience for students.
All right. Well, that was impressive.
Seli, I want to go over to you and then I'll pass it to you, Eric. As the director of mental health operations, that seems like one of the most critical roles, right? Because you're defining and evolving and providing. How do you, I don't know, I don't even know how to ask the question, because mental health issues seem to manifest themselves in different ways, sometimes even unexpectedly. How do you prepare people to deal with these items that keep coming up for students? And I don't know if minimize is the right word, but deal or cope or understand. That was like 14 questions. So just take them whatever way you want.
I got it. So basically, we understand that 4 out of 5 students, like Becky was pointing to, have identified that mental health is a crisis on college campuses. So that approach of, making sure that we have all of these ways to reach out to students means that we're going to be meeting their complex needs. It really takes an all hands on deck approach. So we're really proud to walk alongside of our partner schools that use our resources, and their students are being helped. So when we dug a little deeper, just to take a survey of the students that use our services, we know that 40% of students use our services after hours. So outside of 9 to 5, when a lot of times that's when things are hitting them, it's at their darkest moments. Sometimes we're dealing with crisis. We talk to students that are suicidal on a daily basis. And in a recent survey, we found that nearly 60% of our college students have received mental health care during their K through 12 years. So we know this isn't something brand new. A lot of clinic directors are coming to us saying that students present it with a list of medications and a list of diagnoses the day they walk on the campus. And so how do we, make sure that we're giving them all the support that they need when they need it, and it's accessible, it's equitable access to care. And we have providers that are able to give them evidence-based, solid skills for coping and making sure that they get to those treatment outcomes that they're looking for. We've had to pivot to make sure that we are reaching the needs of students on unique campuses. So regardless of the level of resources or care at a specific campus, we're able to jump in and help support students.
Amazing.
This is a topic that I find to be, I would say the word precious to me. I was familiar with Timely MD before our conversations we were having. I used to work for a K-12 company called Gaggle, where they do a lot of K-12 mental health space, or like entering that space. And one of the projects that I worked on was basically a content analysis of over 400 suicide notes that our algorithms had picked up on their Google Drive and everything. And so I had to go in. Where are they coming from? What were they talking about? And you said something, Seli, that was very poignant, I feel, is that our students aren't developing mental health issues when they get to school, when they get to university. They're coming with these issues and with those problems that they're having. And so as someone who is really just kind of envious of today's student and how much access they have to a lot of different things, what would you say is what makes the experience that students have with you different than what they were doing before? Like why would a university need Timely in the first place? I guess, like, maybe that's like a really leading salesy question, but I'm really fascinated about this idea.
Well, I'm going to preface it just a little bit. So to even emphasize what you're saying about them coming in with issues that are really out of their control. The CDC and the Surgeon General have highlighted alarming public health issues as it relates to youth and mental health. And so the crisis has been growing, and members of the Gen Z face unprecedented mental health issues and challenges that we just haven't seen before. So inevitably, colleges and universities are going to also be seeing this tsunami of new students that are starting their college careers with higher levels of acuity than we've ever seen before. So having this more all hands on deck approach is necessary, because we can't staff our way out of this mental health crisis. Let's just say that.
That's interesting. I like that statement.
It's something that we've been facing on every single campus. Like, the story repeats itself. So having that comprehensive approach to health and well-being is absolutely essential for driving students' success and developing resilience. And our team is committed to making sure that these students are reaching their therapeutic outcomes that they're looking to us to help them with. And we've seen on many campuses where, counseling centers, they're overwhelmed. They start out the year 3 months behind sometimes, students having to wait several months just to see someone. So having a partner that's virtual, that comes alongside them, available 24/7, 365, that gives them the flexibility to handle sometimes those higher acuity students that need those in-person contacts a little quicker. Sometimes they're able to do that better if they have some relief on some end. And we work to make sure that we have the resources to be that relief.
I got a question for both of you, I think. And Becky, I want to start with you. As a senior vice president of strategy, let me ask my question. How about that? And you could tell me how you weave strategy into this. And then it's kind of a two-part question, but in life, as you could look back several years, mental health was not an accepted concept, right? If somebody said you have mental health, there's mental health issues, I think a lot of us, and I say us in society, would think that this is a person who has some kind of disability of some kind, not the general population, right? So there was a different way of interpreting it. Like if I told my grandfather that somebody had mental health issues, he wouldn't be thinking about a normal person, quote unquote normal person. He'd be thinking that somebody had something wrong with them, and that's just not true. We all have issues. They were couched in different ways, though, right? I think about retaining students back earlier in my career, students under incredible stress that would talk about, providing for the family, or it's financial, or it's time, or it's this, and you could see the sweat brimming on their brow that there was something underneath that, but we didn't ever recognize it. So there was this, lack of acceptance. And now moving forward, going back to what Seli was saying, there's students coming into higher education now with problems that are manifesting themselves earlier So I guess two-part question. From a strategy perspective, is there an acceptance piece to the strategy where you're communicating out that this is an issue, advocacy, and so on? And secondarily to that, maybe this is for you, Seli, is social media to blame for a lot of this? I mean, is there some kind of trigger for kids today? Like social media didn't exist 20 years ago. Maybe that mental health issues still did. But does that bring our younger generations more stress being more public? Anyway, Becky, start with you on the strategy.
Yeah, those are great questions, and I'll take the strategy piece, and Seli can take the clinical piece, and absolutely can relate to it on a personal level. I have a teenage son, and we talk a lot about social media as well as mental health support. So it's so important to normalize and destigmatize mental health support. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I think Gen Z does that better than Gen X, Gen Y. And they've essentially like normalized it and destigmatized it themselves. And what that does is that encourages us to really create a culture of care that normalizes mental health conversations and encourages them to seek support. So students have told us the number one way they seek support is through each other. So when you're looking at it through the lens of strategy, how do we create an environment that provides equitable access to care with a high quality experience and in a way that students find engaging? So one thing that we keep in mind is the student experience. And what does it look like for them on their terms? And students aren't necessarily comparing us to getting into a car, going to a doctor's office, signing in at the sheet, sitting there, having somebody ask them questions. They're comparing us to the experience that they have with social media, the Amazon, the Instagram. So how do we take that experience that they've come to know and to trust and that they're comfortable with, but also create that holistic environment? And to do that, we have to consider that they have a variety of diverse backgrounds, identities, and lived experiences. So from a strategy perspective, yes, we have to do everything we can to destigmatize mental health and mental health support. And the way that we do that is encouraging them to reach out to each other, try self-care resources on their own, and ultimately also speak with a provider that can help them. From a clinical perspective, I'll let Seli take care of that.
Epic.
So one of the things that I think is really important to touch on is the fact of why students are coming in. So we have students that are approaching the idea of navigating mental health treatment or mental health care on their own for the first time. So we're working to help support them through that education process. They are concerned about their levels of stress and anxiety and depression. And like Becky was pointing to, a lot of times when students are, experiencing these things, the idea of normalizing the conversation around mental health also helps us to, when we're saying destigmatize, that means those students that may be suffering in silence are the ones that also get the help. So we want to reach out to those sufferers that may not have, been ready to go see a professional as their first step, but maybe they're looking to more of our peer community for support and being able to talk to other students across the country about their same shared experiences. And that might be their first step. But that's also great because what we've seen on our platform is that over 50% of students that approach our peer community may not have ever approached the idea of scheduling an appointment with a licensed provider. So that's something we know. And as we begin to get more of this information out and in a way that students deem accessible and equitable, and also we're paying attention to the diversity piece of it. We're getting students that, okay, great, they're stressed, they have anxiety and depression, but like Becky was pointing to, more of the support that comes from a diverse provider base. So we focus a lot of attention on making sure that we are continuously educating our providers on what it means to provide equitable access to care, what it means to meet students where they are, how we can use lived experience to approach students and help them problem solve and make sure that they're feeling represented. And so historically, underrepresented groups, including racial, ethnic, gender, sexual minorities, often experience poor mental health outcomes, either because they had lack of access or because they didn't receive quality care in those spaces. So being able to not only provide it to them 24/7, 365, but also to give them, those value-based, those resilient skills, and also to make sure that they are getting treatment that's evidence-based from a provider base that's focused on this specific population is really what makes the difference for our students.
It's time to jam.
Oh, yeah.
At Genzabar Jam, Genzabar's annual meeting, May 31st to June 3rd. Jam is the annual meeting for the Genzabar community. Engage with Genzabar product experts and executives, share ideas, insights, and information with your peers. It's time to jam.
Oh, yeah.
You can register now at jam.genzabar.com. Don't settle for average marketing strategies. Join us at the Element 451 Engage Summit, June 27 and 28, and discover how to harness the power of AI technology in higher ed marketing. Connect with industry leaders, explore cutting-edge technologies, and future-proof your marketing strategy. Use promo code EdUp50 for $50 off. Register now at engage.element451.com.
One of the things that I learned while I was working for that company doing data analytics is that there's so much that we can learn from the different things that are going on for what our students are doing, and just basically our coming in and helping students, we were able to learn a whole bunch of things. And so I'm really interested in a lot of the if you were to take a step back and look at some of the trends or look at some of the interesting insights that you've been able to pull, what's going on with the student health of kids today in universities. What are they worried about? What are some of the things that have surprised you in doing the work that you're doing?
Sure. I think one of the things that surprised me with the launch of our peer community last year is that what students are coming to their providers, the issues that students that are speaking with their providers isn't necessarily the same as what they're talking about with each other. So you look at our provider visits, the top reasons that students want to speak with a provider is stress, anxiety, and depression. But when you look at peer community, certainly stress, anxiety, and depression are prevalent, but the number one topic that they're talking about is relationships. And so that tells us a lot about what they're comfortable discussing with each other. And again, going back to somebody that shares their lived experience, somebody that they can, find, whether it be a provider or each other, that they can relate to on a variety of levels might look a little different. Also, what kind of surprised me a little bit was throughout peer community, a lot of students seem to be looking for how to take that next step to have the confidence to reach out and schedule time with a provider.
That's like the mental barrier. I mean, say mental health, that's the mental barrier that exists internally for all of us, right? If you've got to get over the self-imposed, is this okay for me to do this? And am I going to be labeled somehow almost, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I find such a benefit to the students that we support is that they do not incur a cost per visit. And they also don't need health insurance to access our services. So as Seli mentioned earlier, we have so many students where either we are their only access to care or they're understanding how to navigate the healthcare system for the first time. So to your point, those types of learnings are all things that we take in order to build a better platform for students and then the communities that we serve. And I know Seli's done a lot of work about the destigmatization and the normalization and some of the trends that she's seen over the past 6 months to 2 years.
Right. I think one of the things I would point out is that, even in an APA report that that pointed out that the pandemic associated with remote learning in 2020 and 2021 only increased the amount of student mental health and well-being challenges that students were facing. So we're even diving into the fact that college students have non-traditional schedules. Many of them have some extracurricular activities, digital and in-person distractions. They have long hours, and getting into a space where face-to-face counseling is just going to be convenient for them during only business hours 9 to 5 may not be feasible or preferred by most students. So we have an approach that includes also making sure that we have student athletes in mind. We have those community college students in mind that may have families, and like Becky pointed to earlier, could be suffering from some levels of insecurities in other areas that are causing roadblocks to prevent them from accessing mental health care. So their desire is to be self-sufficient and manage care on their own, but it can be difficult if there's other pre-existing barriers or additional barriers such as pay or anything else that may be stopping them from actually accessing care that they're needing. So we've seen that more than 87% of college leaders are reporting on an increased request for counseling services for students that are outside of the box, outside of just what they have on campus, and they want to be able to offer a broad variety of resources to students. We never know how students are going to access care. We don't know who they're going to go to. But what we want to do is make sure that we're putting it at their fingertips. And even the Trevor Project reported earlier this year that 33% of LGBTQIA plus students, college students, reported that they didn't even feel comfortable going into an in-person mental health services on their campus. So it's our effort to reach those students and that identify in that community also.
Excellent.
That's it's interesting because the you talked about barriers, and, cost and pay and all these things, and immediately in my mind, one of the things that I always have a question about are there any cultural barriers? Is it taboo to use words like mental and health together in the Black community or in the Latino community versus the white community? Do you break it down by segment, by ethnic backgrounds, by anything like that? And are there differences and how you see people or their acceptance to access mental health? Because you look at some of the immigrant families perhaps, and this is me stereotyping, but you wonder, is that an accepted thing? When you're coming from another country, it's probably not discussed. And then you get here and you go, what is this? I think about my own family, mental health. I can't tell you a time ever that mental health was brought up. Sure, there was probably issues, but if I brought that up to my father, I had a good dad, but if I brought it to my dad, he'd say, get your butt outside and go, punch a tree or something if you have mental health concerns. It wasn't a widely accepted thing. Seli, so there may be a question for you with cultural differences at all?
Definitely, which is exactly why we focus on making sure that we're providing the most diverse services to our students by making sure our provider base is diverse and continuously educated. We've partnered with Violet, and I know Becky might talk a little bit more about that, to make sure that we're upskilling our providers, always being aware of what cultural and other community differences that our students present with, because there are barriers. I've talked to even students that were so excited that their parents weren't going to receive a bill because they said that one of the major things is my parents didn't have the money to send me to college, so I would feel bad to send them a bill to say I'm sad or I'm depressed or I'm experiencing mental health issues that aren't discussed in our home or our community. And on top of that, to seem as if I was ungrateful. So we're even talking about socioeconomic issues that students are faced with, and they understand the disparities between themselves and where they come from, and maybe some of the students that they're encountering in this new college environment. So what we also have to focus on is, does virtual mental health care work? And what we've seen is that three quarters, 75% of students that reported mental health improvement. And crucially, that includes students, 100% of students that presented with potential risk for suicide. They were also seeing improvements. So not only being able to, hit those diverse groups and backgrounds from socioeconomic, race, ethnicity, gender, we're also looking at what are those outcomes, how are they meaningful, so students can thrive.
So here's a question I have. Because I am a proponent of all of this. Like, I think that this is all beautiful. And I think that the acceptance of mental health as something, as Joy pointed out, is something that's no longer stigmatized as much, is a beautiful thing. What do you say to the naysayers? Like, what do you say to the people who say, not only do we not need this kind of service, but the university is not responsible for the mental health of students. Like, they are there to educate students. They are not there to make sure that they feel good about themselves. Like what is the response there?
I've heard don't students have grit anymore? They're just,
Yeah.
I've heard that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. The bootstrap argument.
I've heard about resilience. Resilience seems to be a very well talked about topic across higher education. And really, when I look at that, you talk about the naysayers, and I've been at several conferences over the last year, and I haven't thankfully experienced too many naysayers. I think what the pandemic did was it brought to the forefront a need to support student mental health. And what we're seeing is that improving student mental health leads to increased student engagement. And increased student engagement can lead to an increase in student outcomes. And with the enrollment trends over the last 3 years, schools are struggling. And how do we not just attract new students, but also how do we retain the students that we have and give them the support that they need in an effort to ensure that they are successful? And so the mental health of students today really becomes the mental health of the workforce tomorrow. And I see that being increasingly accepted and acknowledged. And we see it all day, every day, schools trying to do everything that they can to support students in various ways. But to Seli's earlier point, they can't staff their way out of this crisis. And that's really where the partnership comes in, because it might not be feasible for a school not just to have a set of counselors, but counselors that can support students after hours and on the weekends and in crisis situations. And most importantly, providers that reflect the diversity of the student population. And so I think when you kind of like go couch it under that umbrella, I believe that mental health is a basic need that all students should have and that should be supported so that we can all help students become whoever they are meant to be.
It's a really good points, because Eric does, I hear it. I hear the naysayers. I hear not because there's specific people coming on to the podcast, but you hear it and you get it in conversation and it comes up, and especially if you get, I've talked to multiple people who get hit with these types of issues all the time, and it can get frustrating sometimes dealing with them because you don't know how. And so you take out your frustration on the issue of mental health, but it's like not knowing how to handle these issues continuously in mass sometimes that creates that frustration. So it's being prepared, right, Becky? So how do schools, and this for both of you, how does a school get more prepared if they're interested in expanding mental health services? And TimelyCare is something they haven't considered, but now are because they're listening to this podcast. What do you say about preparation, about how you can tackle these issues in a better way with better partners?
Yeah, Absolutely. And that's exactly why we exist. We are not a replacement for the services offered on campus. We are a supplement, and it is a true partnership. And to your point, when we enter into services with a school, we will sit down with them and we will go through their protocols. And we will develop together escalation paths for acute cases. And we want to make sure that we know the hours of the counseling center, and we want to know their preferences. We want to know where the closest emergency room is, or urgent care, or if they're in a rural or urban population, what the dynamics of their school looks like. And so when we talk about what it means to provide students with services, it's really about awareness and engagement. So when you provide these types of services to students, you have to do it in a way that resonates with them and encourages them to seek support and to seek care. And where really we see this is when we look at kind of how the faculty has essentially they've had to be on the front lines in a lot of ways for students throughout the pandemic. When the pandemic hit and things transitioned to a lot of virtual classes, students didn't really have the luxury of walking down the hallway to the financial aid office or the bursar's office. They went right to the faculty member for that support. So that faculty member isn't just there for academic support. They were there as the mental health coach. They were there to answer financial questions. And it's really about how we partner with the school to ensure that there's awareness and engagement, and that students feel that this is a trusted resource. And in some cases, if you offer something at no cost to students, there's that initial hesitation, right? Like, what's the catch? Like,
yeah, what are you talking about?
Going to get a bill? Are you sure? And so what we've seen is the more we can work with the faculty and the administration to get the word out, the more successful the program is. And in some cases, we're now starting to support the faculty and staff through TimelyCare as well.
That was a follow-up question I had, is like, are you able to extend some services to faculty and staff too?
Absolutely. Seli, you want to walk us through that?
Sure. I think when we talk about how we support faculty and staff, we also have to include our plans for prevention and postvention support on campuses. So we've encountered many campuses that have had some tragedies, student deaths, shootings. How do we come alongside them, like Becky's been describing, and making sure that their faculty and staff has a great deal of support? We've worked with several universities that have said, we are focusing so much on trying to make sure our students are comfortable and that they're okay, but what about us? The counseling center directors are asking, how do we make sure that this plan is outlined so that our faculty and staff know that they have the support? If they identify a student and they're on the front lines, like Becky said, they identify a student who's struggling or needs support or needs help, how do they even approach the conversation? And so creating and normalizing that conversation around mental health and creating a caring campus involves making sure that there's training for even the faculty and staff that know at least how to point a student in the right direction. They may not be clinicians, they may not be licensed, but they can also be that point of contact for someone. And so we're educating, student leadership groups, RAs, RDs, making sure that the math department, that they're receiving the same information and education so they can at least point students in the right direction. But that goes back to that conversation around competencies when we're talking about how we provide upskilling to our providers. Our partnership with a new program called Violet, their platform offers professionals as well as our providers who identify as that can help educate and support students that identify with the LGBTQIA plus community. We also had to make sure that we could offer several languages, 240, so students and faculty and staff could feel comfortable connecting with us and being able to communicate a message in a way that's most comfortable to them. And then also that preventative care. So yes, we do come in on the back end and help support faculty and staff as a postvention plan, but preventative care also includes making sure that students have access to peer support, virtual care, in-person care, yoga, meditation, self-care, extracurriculars. All of those things can help a student find their way and thrive. So we've positioned ourselves to be at the front end on the prevention side, building skills and tools and resilience, as well as on the back end on the postvention side. When things do that may occur, may happen, but we can still come in and support students, faculty, and staff with webinars, grief and loss seminars, things that are going to help restore and build that campus up and make sure that they continue normalizing the conversation.
Seli, does it get worse before it gets better? How do we even think about this for the future? You know what I mean? I wonder if people are like, when is this going to stop? When is everybody just going to be okay? Or are we going to take 2 steps back before we take a bunch of steps forward because not everybody's on board yet? So what does this look like in your eyes going forward?
It's interesting you phrased it that way. A lot of the clinic directors that I talk to, they're concerned about continuing to invest in mental health. That's what they want to do. They want to provide resources for students because what we know is that we don't see an end in sight. This isn't all of a sudden going to just go away. So expanding access to high quality care just isn't enough. TimelyCare wants to empower students to create their own path to care. So we want to give them these options to make sure that they have a place to go and something to lean on. But we go even one step further and we think about these are the same students that are going to be entering the workforce. So in a short period of time, we're working with them not only since they've been K through 12 and now they're in higher ed, we're supporting them with all these great mental health services. But on the other side is the workforce that needs to be ready to embrace them with a high quality services and capabilities to continue what they've gotten started. We have some pretty resilient students and they're pretty resourceful. They know what to do and where to get it and how to get it, and they know when they want it. And so I think one of the most refreshing parts about my job is being able to connect with students one-on-one still. So as a practicing clinician, understanding that students are looking for more support, they're going to demand that schools provide the support because this is where they're spending their, the better part of 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the more that we give them options, the more support, the more education we have on both ends, and the preventative care is really where our focus is going to be. But it's important to students, and I'm sure they're not going to give up on getting the resources. I haven't met a clinic director yet that has felt like, oh yeah, this will be past us. This will be behind us in a year or two. That's not the climate.
Nailed it.
Eric.
It totally makes sense because it's not like people don't have problems. People have problems. That is a fact of life. And then just being able to find an environment that is supportive of that recovery. I think that's pretty cool. Joe,
I see you brewing. Either you're brewing or you're blank minding. Either way,
blank minding right now.
That's okay. I want to just build on what you said, because I think we all have problems, and I think you have to figure out how you want to deal with them. And there's a personalization of care, right? Isn't that kind of what we're talking about? The personalization of care, which is what TimelyCare does. It gives you a personalized. We talk about personalized learning. We talk about everything we do is personalized. You want to order something online? You're going to only order it from the place that gives you the greatest level of personalization and quickness and on-demand service. And it sounds like TimelyCare does that. Becky and Seli, I want you to just take a few minutes to close us out and tell us anything we didn't say about TimelyCare. Becky, you can go first. Anything you want to add about TimelyCare at all? Open mic.
Absolutely. And really appreciated the opportunity to be here. And what keeps coming to my mind is something that we talk about all day, every day in our house and with our teams, is that mental health is a journey. It's not a data point. And to your point, enabling students to be well and thrive in all aspects of their lives is our mission. We don't want students to just get better. We want them to be well and to develop the resilience to continue to be well and to help them make their own choices, whether that be in engaging in self-care resources with their peers or with a provider. So we will continue to innovate, anticipate, and invest in the future to transform care delivery models and drive positive health outcomes for each and every student, because we know that mental health does not take a day off.
I love that. Seli, over to you. Last word. Anything you want to say?
I will piggyback on your statement of just how we are providing that individualized care. We have a lot of students that are approaching this process for the first time. So some of them aren't ready to meet with providers like we talked about before, but being able to understand all of the resources that are available to them, communicating with our campuses, understanding what they have to offer in person and online is really our way of making sure students have access to all the different ways they can receive support. They can get into scheduled counseling, pursue health coaching to help them further develop the positive health skills that they're learning in scheduled counseling and implement them in life, and then get online and develop a program to help them through education on depression or self-guided meditation and yoga. But how do we get them really engaged in all of that? And that's really giving them resources at their fingertips that is effortless. So our focus and our mission has been to continue to build that model of digital self-care as well as peer community. We know students are going to reach out to each other, but how do we infuse in that process quality evidence-based approaches to care? And it sets us far apart from just Googling on the internet or going on a TikTok to get some support. You're actually getting evidence-based mental health support and understanding that it's coming from a trusted source. So that's one of those ways that they individualize care, is just by giving them access and understanding what their resources are. So that's what we're here for also.
Well, I love that you guys came on, because this is a continual issue and journey, I would say, for higher education and our students. The K-12 piece is a whole nother thing, but we get to see it here as students escalate through the ranks. It will be something that we talk about repeatedly and continuously as this podcast moves on, because it comes up in almost every single conversation with every single president, CEO that we talk to. We're talking about the mental health of students. One person that keeps my mental health in a better place is my guest co-host today. He is Eric James Stevens. He's an ed tech entrepreneur. And Eric, thanks for coming back. You're a little rusty, but we're going to forgive you.
Thanks. You're too kind, Joe. Thanks for having me.
I do like your EdUp mug that you have there above the right side of your head. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Co-host mug. And of course, our guest today, and I'm not going to outro them with an applause. I'm going to give them a better sound to go along with the theme today of discussing mental health. First, we have Seli Fakorzi. She's the director of mental health operations with TimelyCare, and Becky Laman, senior vice president of strategy for TimelyCare. Did you ladies have a good time on the podcast today talking about, well, I would say it's a good time talking about mental health, but do you feel like you got your message out about TimelyCare and what you provide?
Absolutely. And really appreciated Eric's insights as well. It's nice to connect with colleagues and really just talk about the issues and how we can solve them together.
Well, we appreciate having you both here. With that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Are you ready to jam?
Oh, yeah.
At Genzabar Jam 2023 in Orlando, Florida, May 31st through June 3rd, for 4 days of breakout sessions, peer-led discussions, countless hours networking with your peers and the Genzabar team, social events, meals, everything. Come down, learn from each other, network. It's time to get together, and you can do that at Genzabar Jam. Register now at jam.genzabar.com.
Oh, yeah.
Experience Element 451's Engage Summit Conference this June and get ready to unleash the power of AI in higher ed marketing. Deep dive into how this emerging tech will revolutionize the education landscape. From personalized student engagement to turbocharging your marketing efforts with AI, these sessions are guaranteed to help you smash your enrollment goals. Connect with like-minded professionals, explore cutting-edge edtech products and services, and leave with the knowledge to supercharge your institution's growth. Don't wait. Register now at engage.element451.com and seize your chance to lead the pack in the AI-driven education revolution. Use promo code EdUp50 for $50 off your registration.